Someone should do a professional wrestling commentator tier list where they grade the...
You're doing it right now.
Yeah.
You're the someone.
Most of them aren't dead. Jerry the King Lawler, Jim Ross. I'm putting Corey Graves up there. I'm also gonna go...
Bubba the Love Sponge?
Welcome to Filmhouse, everybody. This week's episode is sponsored by Quip and Dave. I've got my friends James and Elise here this week.
Hello.
Say hello.
Hi.
We got a bunch of different stuff to talk about this week. Talk about some Spider-Man. Joker came out. We have not been able to see Joker yet, but there's a lot to talk about around the film. Todd Phillips has said some stuff about how comedy's dead. Jonah Hill's in a Batman movie. Got a Birds of Prey trailer. Got a few things to jump around on.
There's so much. There's so much happening in movies and nothing happening.
Yeah, there's nothing happening. You guys saw Parasite last night?
We did.
Yeah.
We did.
Which you have great things to say about?
Yeah,
All
but
right.
we're probably not going to talk much about it
No.
because the less you hear, the better it is.
You guys are actually good about spoilers. There's some people in the office that don't at all care.
I will rate it and I will give it an 8 out of 8. It's an
Whoa,
8-point
you brought the
scale,
number
and
down
got
to give it 100%.
Yeah.
Wow, unbelievable.
It's a perfect film.
But we can start with something light before getting into heavy commentary. Tom Holland saved Spider-Man, right?
Yeah, he did.
A couple weeks, not too long ago, we had a big whole Filmhouse about this subject, where people were siding with Disney over Sony a little bit.
BTS to the production of Filmhouse. What happens basically every single week, and I have no doubt it'll happen again this week, is we record an episode as late into the week as possibly possible
Late
to
Thursday
make sure
afternoon.
it's relevant. And then we'll discuss what appears to be the biggest story of the week. And then, without fail, Friday afternoon, somewhere around 5:45, a new news story will break, either completely neglecting the story we discussed or resolving it in a way that we can comment on.
It happens too often to be funny, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this is good news. Everyone's got to be happy about this, right? Everyone's it guy at the time.
yeah.
Tom Holland, everyone loves Tom Holland,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And apparently he does some good. This Hollywood Reporter said that Holland met with Bob Iger, Disney's CEO, and the Sony film chairman, Tom Rothman, several times trying to bring them back together. And I guess finally convinced Rothman to talk to Bob Iger again.
Man.
And I guess it was that easy.
Yeah.
That's wild to think that some kid has that kind of power.
Yeah.
I mean, it is strange to think about. With great power comes great responsibility, Tom. Just remember that.
And he's got a lot of power now. He's a deal maker now. He's not just the star of a Marvel movie. He's making backroom deals. Elise seems to really care about Spider-Man.
I think it's so interesting, and I think that the star rise of Tom Holland is really interesting because there was a lot of skepticism around who this new Spider-Man could be.
Another
we
British
all love Toby.
fellow.
Yeah, and I know, of course, it's not like they plucked some kid out of the New York inner city school system to play. It was like, no, they got, and the fact that, and also Andrew Garfield has this notoriety for actually like pissing off a lot of executives.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
He thought he was hot shit or something?
yeah, apparently, there's all those stories behind him and how there was some story about how he made some comment to an executive and that basically destroyed Amazing Spider-Man 3. So the fact that, Tom Holland has so much good faith with these executives, and really they see him as this new guiding light in the Marvel franchise, because it used to be Iron Man, it used to be Captain America.
Yeah, they're teeing him up to be the future leader.
Yeah,
right?
they don't really have that one like beacon that we all look to. And I do think he sort of fills that, not exactly.
He loves dogs too, right? Doesn't he have a pit bull or something?
I don't know. All I know him really for is the spoilers. So maybe he threatened to spoil something if they didn't broker a deal. I do think that it's, obviously if we reflect and think of all the Kevin Feige stuff that was sort of their excuse.
Yeah, that was interesting that they blamed it specifically on Spider-Man, announced the Star Wars thing, and then immediately announced Spider-Man's back.
I want someone to make a mock comic book cover of when Spider-Man is trapped He's like basically
pushing up.
He's like trying to push
metal.
out of the thing, except it's the ultimate sacrifice that Tom Holland made. Is he went into the offices and he said, "Fine, I'll be in Venom too." That's what happened.
Could be it.
I guarantee you.
Yeah?
I almost
I'll do
certainly
it.
like he probably was like, "I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this," and they probably didn't secure that kind of thing when he actually signed on to do it. And then I bet he went in and he probably went. He like Jesus Christ. Basically, it's basically
Turned
the
himself
same
in.
sacrifice. Said, "Okay, I will allow you to pay me to be in Venom
Yeah.
too." I agree.
I think Tom Hardy's looking through the blinds.
And they went, "Fine." And then Bob Iger's like, "Tom, you don't have to do this."
No, Tom,
He's
no.
like, "I do." Snaps.
Well, good on Tom. I think we actually, when we discussed this, surmised that this would happen, that they'd work it out anyway.
Yeah.
So they have, right? Everyone's happy.
It is so weird that we live in an age where these giant corporations have these giant public fights.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that I guess they wanted it to be public because if they wanted it to be secret, then it would have been secret, and almost certainly one of them, some person from one company or the other went to their respective contacts at different
Their
entertainment
PR companies.
outlets and then said, "Oh, you should talk about this because we figure that public support is leverage in this world."
They wanted to pressure the other end.
But it is just weird that why are we seeing the inner workings? I'm not crazy about it.
Me either.
Yeah, well,
It's. I mean, again, we touched on it. It's corporations getting more and more money. Like
Yeah.
it's just now it's a battle over a giant fortress of diamonds.
Well, I think we are seeing these giant media companies start to do battle with
Yeah.
one another over this IP.
Just because there's only so many left.
Yeah.
It's easy to find space in the industry when there's a lot of space, but when there's only 3 companies that make everything. Yeah.
Just another light note. This was going around on Twitter.
Uh-huh.
Kurt Russell, a picture of Kurt Russell with his stunt double Dick Warlock. Dick's got quite a career.
Okay.
He was the Shape in a bunch of the early Halloween movies. Big stunt guy. But I don't know. This for some reason just brought me joy.
Mm-hmm.
So
no, yeah, that's great. Always fun to see
Quite
young
a
Kurt
name.
Russell too.
yeah, what happened to him?
Kurt Russell.
He became what's his face from
Oh, wait, I can't.
Jeff Bridges.
He was the stunt coordinator, I think, in Renegade. Do you remember Renegade?
I do,
James
yeah.
Lawrence.
Lorenzo
Oh,
Lamas.
yeah. He testified.
That show had stunts.
Yeah, lots of stunts. This is Walker 2.0. What else we got? J.J. Abrams deal. This was a couple of weeks ago, but people in the office found it interesting. J.J. Abrams turned down $500 million from Apple to move over to our parent company, Warner Brothers, with a $250 million exclusive deal for Bad Robot.
$250 million.
I don't know. I like JJ. I think he does interesting work, especially when he's given these huge kind of tentpole franchises to reinvigorate for modern audiences. I really like the Star Trek movies.
Here's the interesting thing, though, about this. J.J. Abrams, is a common criticism is that he loves to start things and not finish things.
Yeah.
You know what DCEU's biggest problem has been? Following
What's that?
through on anything that they start.
Yeah.
So they're fine. They're great at starting things. I Man of Steel isn't an amazing movie, but I think it's a fine starting point.
Sure.
But the problem is the follow-up.
Just dropped it.
So now we have. I like J.J. Abrams, and hopefully when you turn down $250 million for another $250 million, but like when you give up half of $500 million because I can only assume it's because he's allowed more creative control and because it's a piece of content that he's more interested in being a part of.
Sure.
Right?
I think from what I understood, the big knocks on Apple's, they wanted exclusivity to Bad Robot, which is a problem when you're a company that's probably got a dozen projects in development all around Hollywood.
Yeah.
And there was like no IP. Apple doesn't own much at all.
Yeah.
So I think those were the two big issues.
Yeah.
But
that's
I don't know.
interesting.
So it's interesting. So J.J. Abrams is good at restarting things. Is there like a filmmaker out there that's a closer, or like, someone that's good at? I guess the Russos took something that the rest of Hollywood created and took it to the next end. Maybe they're a closer.
But I don't think that's Feige though.
Yeah.
You can't really give credit to them for that.
That's true.
Who's good at wrapping things up? No one ever finishes
No.
anything.
Endings are hard. I think I've
Yeah.
said that a million times
They
on the
are.
show.
Yeah.
Peter Jackson.
Peter Jackson
I
has
mean,
once.
Well, The Hobbit he
this-
closed as well.
Did he? 4 armies in that 5 army movie.
Does that include the Hawks or whatever?
People have tried to say that again. I think that does include the Hawks as 4. I'm excited to see whatever. I mean, like, I'm over this version of DCEU. Like, the thing that kills me is when something's getting going and then it all comes to a crashing halt because of whatever, money almost all the time.
Yeah.
But there's nothing to wait for. There's no ambition. There's nothing to hold out for in the next DC movies.
Yeah?
Like,
You're not stoked for Birds of Prey, James?
well, but this has nothing to do with anything. This doesn't build off of Batman v Superman
it
or
seems like
Justice
it's building
League.
off of Suicide Squad.
Yeah, but what was Suicide Squad building off of? That existed in a half-hybrid world where Batman kind of existed.
It's true.
So, like, it doesn't really seem... Oh, God, I'm not into this at all.
It's interesting because I saw the reaction to this. A lot of people were like, "This looks like fun," and I was kind of like, I don't yet feel like this looks like fun.
It looks pretty choppy to me. I don't know. Maybe that's just the trailer. But
Well, if someone said that this was a like a DC Warner Plus, whatever, like a Warner exclusive for their streaming software, or, streaming app, then I'd be like, oh yeah, this looks cool. I'm glad that they got her to sign on for something like that. But the idea of this being in a movie,
It does feel frantic, and right now, if you told me that it was a movie that was a series of vignettes about her and them stitched together, like more like a Sin City, I would believe you. But that's what that structure of that movie was. Because right now, I'm like trying to discern what the plot of the movie is, and I guess now, Harley finds herself trying to be oppressed by a new dude, which is Ewan McGregor.
who is Black Mask?
okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Our Batman experts out this week. Sorry, everybody.
But
Who are the other women?
We
they're the birds
got
of prey.
yeah, the Birds of Prey, James.
Well, this movie is called Birds of Prey, but this trailer thus
Oh,
far
it's
has
all-
done
it's-
nothing
it's
to
all
establish
Harley.
that there's an ensemble.
Because like Mary
thing
Elizabeth
happening.
Winstead is in it, right?
yeah, she plays the
And
Huntress.
I totally forgot and didn't even pick her out in the trailer.
Okay.
To me, it seems like they're almost hoping this might launch more movies. Like, this is part of the future of DCU, is like
Okay.
all these little spin-offs. But she's, they're introducing Huntress, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, Black Canary, Cassandra Cain. I know these are all like C-list Batman
Yeah.
characters.
Yeah.
It doesn't appear that Batman's in the movie. Maybe he'll be in the movie.
Someone out there who's read the comics is going to say, oh no, it's actually amazing, or I loved this arc of whatever. But it just seems like now we are scraping a barrel just to
Yeah.
find things that don't mess with other things that are important,
Well, maybe that's the idea, is they can kind of have their own little side universe without Superman, without Batman, and whatever happened to Green Lantern. And
The one
Wonder
shot
Woman.
of Mary Elizabeth Winstead as the Huntress was her in like sweats with a tiny crossbow.
This is her origin. I don't know.
How does that make me excited? Oh,
don't
maybe it'll
know.
be fine. This does not look like a movie that's going to come out in theaters.
Well, the director is kind of plucked from obscurity.
Uh-huh.
I'd never heard of anything that she'd done before, but they're giving a lady a shot, which I think's awesome.
Yeah, this is the biggest problem with the DC EU and stuff. I haven't seen the Joker yet, but that just seems like it's like completely far removed. And God willing, the new Batman is just completely far. They're just side stories. They're like one-offs or whatever. But some of this stuff just seems like they can't find a tone for the world.
Yeah.
And it's jarring. So like Harley Quinn, we know, is someone who exists because a psychopathic clown man threw her into a vat of chemicals. And Mary Elizabeth Winstead is someone who drives a motorcycle.
Yeah.
And
Like-
shoots a crossbow.
Yeah.
And so like you put them in a scene together and I don't know how I'm supposed to feel. Like that's one shot. That's the only shot of them like as a group back there. And it is literally designed to just, there's that.
Oh.
But even beyond that is another shot.
Hey, Rosie Perez is back, James.
Okay, this shot. There's no identity anywhere in any of that. Rosie Perez is just in like street clothes. I'm guessing she is a police officer.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
she
she.
looks like-
Who might be the question?
The
I guess?
only other
Renee
one who is
Montoya?
remotely in anything that like can compete with Harley on that screen is the woman on the right. But even she is just wearing one of the many colors that Harley Quinn is wearing.
She's Black Canary.
She's Black Canary, I
guess?
believe.
Okay.
Again, they're all, you know. I think you hit on something when they're trying to have some movies that aren't tied to the giant universe.
But this still does seem tied to it. This still seems
But
tied
it's
to
its
Suicide
own little
Squad.
side thing. It does seem very much like Suicide Squad.
I'm always rooting for Margot Robbie.
Me too.
Really like her.
And it's a, you know, I think Harley Quinn's a hugely marketable character.
Yeah.
That's like what everyone got from Suicide Squad was that she was fun.
It was, I would love to do some sort of controlled experiment where you make an actually good movie and you put that Harley Quinn in it and you see if people actually like her. Like, Suicide Squad is a trash piece of garbage movie, and she was good in it, so so everyone thinks she was great. I think like the character
Because
Harley
the
Quinn,
movie
this isn't
was
a
so bad?
commentary on Margot Robbie or her acting or whatever, but I think that Suicide Squad was garbage. So the baseline was 0, and she was like a 3, and you're like, oh my God, well that's way more, 300% more than 1 is 3.
Yeah, like when it's you and Diablo,
Yeah,
whatever.
you're gonna look better as Margot Robbie, who is the only person other than I guess Will Smith, but he was completely miscast. Seemed like anyone gave 2 shits about being there or doing anything.
You don't care about Rick Flag? Joel Kinnaman's Rick Flag?
Oh.
No,
Yeah.
I don't.
He's
I don't,
coming back,
honestly.
baby.
I don't honestly. But I don't. This does not look. This. They're creating a sub-universe within the DC universe that I hate. That I absolutely.
You already hate it?
I mean,
Not having seen it?
this is now the Suicide Squad universe, and none of this looks good to me.
What about James Gunn's involvement in the Suicide Squad? Does that give you hope?
I have
for
no
it?
idea. I mean, James Gunn has done a pretty good job establishing that if you need to have a cartoon world, then you create a world where all of that matches, and then so you start at a 10, and then the standout characters are 20s. So.
But they all the characters actually have character and heart.
Yes.
And something more than just being dressed up in a silly costume with laser powers.
I think people love Groot in Guardians of the Galaxy, not just because he says, I am Groot and is a tree man. It's because there's something about the writing of that character that tugs on your heartstrings and wants you to be like, oh, I really wish I had a small stuffed version of that Groot. I don't know. Am I crazy?
No.
Am I a crazy person?
No.
No.
I think I'm
I
just...
mean, I want a small stuffed Slipknot, too. I get it.
So yesterday, Elise, you were out loud speaking about who is this Suicide Squad? Who could this Suicide Squad be? Who are these random people?
Who is the Suicide Squad? We know we got Captain Boomerang coming back.
Thank goodness
God.
Jai Courtney's back. But there's people like Idris Elba, who's in this movie. Taika Waititi is probably just, I'm guessing, going to do his thing where he voices some CGI monstrosity.
Such an interesting choice for him. It's got to be a friendship with James Gunn or something that inspired that.
Yeah.
I see them as like kindred spirits in a way.
They came from the small and the weird, and now they're on top of their industry.
Yeah.
Keeping that kind of weird heart, which I think is probably hard to do in the massive blockbuster world. Internet's favorite Nathan Fillion is apparently a character in Suicide Squad.
Castle?
Yeah.
Which I called him Bones temporarily because I got him and David Boreanaz confused.
You did?
I've never seen either of those shows, but I kind of like.
They both
if I
ran
think of
forever.
Yeah, they ran forever. They seemed vanilla. Had a dude, had a single name, because was his name Bones on Bones.
No,
she was Bones.
Oh, okay. And his name was Castle on Castle.
Yeah,
I think so.
That's how
he was a
by the
mystery
way-
writers that solved crimes.
Yeah,
I
if
think.
you ever wanna, which is
That's
not at
Angela
all, not
Lansbury.
at all the premise that of a
That's Murder, She
sitcom
Wrote.
before. But here's the thing: they just put the cast. We can't assume that every name on that list is now in the Suicide
True.
Squad.
We
can
have to. We have no choice
What
but
about
to
Michael
assume.
Rooker?
He's in
Everyone's-
it. He's in
yeah.
it. He's in the squad. Pete
John
Davidson?
Cena, James.
He's
I
in
know,
the
plays
squad.
Cena.
A
John
character
Cena.
called Peacemaker.
John
what the
Cena?
fuck is Peacemaker?
He's in the squad.
He's in it. He
We
was
should get
great
more
in
wrestlers.
Bumblebee.
We have to over-assume that all these people are part of the Suicide Squad. There are no tertiary characters. There are no villains. How can you have a villain when your heroes are the villains? That is the same question that the Suicide Squad begets.
Mm-hmm.
And I, for one, could not care.
Do we know that John Cena is playing Peacemaker? The
That's
character that you had to Google that is so popular that when you search Peacemaker, nothing came up until you added DC.
Well, I don't know. This is what
This
is
is
on
speculation?
IMDb right now. I don't know. He's
Okay.
looks like a guy with a gun and a helmet.
so he's
it looks
back to playing
fucking
the Marine
stupid.
again.
Yeah. Well,
Well,
can
I
John
mean-
Cena actually act? I don't know.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Excuse me?
He actually-
John Cena
Yeah.
act?
I've never seen a
Excuse
John
me?
Cena movie.
What's your
You've
deal?
seen him do anything, though.
You've seen him
You don't
do
know the real
anything.
John Cena unless you have a terminal disease.
Is that the only way to meet him?
Yeah.
I mean, he's got great comedic chops.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited
Yeah.
about King Shark.
Oh, yeah.
Is King Shark
That's
going to
new
be
Killer
in it?
Croc.
Yeah.
That's new Killer Croc.
Oh, well, that's definitely Taika Waititi then.
No,
giant-
there's some dude, Stephen Agee.
Well, he's going to be the body.
Oh, okay,
Taika
yeah.
Waititi's going to be the voice.
He's gonna do his little Kiwi voice.
Yeah.
This dude.
I'm a Shaq. I'm a Shaq. I'm King Shaq.
Oh, excuse me, you just going to read this book? I'm sorry, you wanted me to what? It's my eyes. I can see around corners. Well, I don't know. There's a lot to unpack in that Suicide Squad cast. I do trust James Gunn, though.
I trust him a lot. Despite your few minutes ago vocal hatred of the DCEU, you have trust that James Gunn can do something fun.
Well, to be clear, I don't think that this Suicide Squad's going to have much to do at all with any Suicide Squad.
You think they're just going to let him go do his own thing?
Yeah. Do you think... I don't think that he would say yes to that if they were like, we want you to make a sequel to the one that had Diablo in it. I don't know. I feel like they probably only lured him in because they were like, yeah, we don't know what we're doing. We don't care. Do you want to make something called Suicide Squad? And he was like, yeah.
Well, that was
All
when he
right.
was fired from Marvel, too. Do you think he
Oh,
would have
wipe
made
it
that
up.
choice?
But was he fired from Marvel?
Well,
Unless
it was all a
very naive of us
smoke
to
show.
assume that he was actually fired from Marvel and had to desperately figure out what his next thing was going to be.
I mean,
Yeah, I would love to know the inside of everything that happened there.
we were just talking about not wanting to know how the sausage is made with Disney.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we knock on Suicide Squad, but it made almost $750 million.
That means zero to me.
It means nothing to you, but that's why there's more Suicide
No,
Squad.
I understand that. But I also think that Warner Brothers knows if there's one thing they've tested is that all the effort Marvel is putting into constructing this thing, getting people to come see this movie so that way they'll go see the next movie or whatever, is really not as important as just putting a character that you recognize in a movie. Sony also figured that out too. People thought Venom was a Spider-Man movie and they went and saw it in droves. So they were like, listen, James, you can do whatever you want to. You just have to call it Suicide Squad.
They should have called it Venom, a Spider-Man story.
They should have. The next one.
So are you saying DC still needs to clean house and start over again with the J.J. Abrams?
I don't think DC needs to do anything.
Is that what J.J.'s working on?
Because if it were up to me, I would get my money back for having watched Suicide Squad. So I'm clearly not their target demographic. But if I would like some coherence...
Do you think J.J. could do that? He hadn't made a superhero movie. Has he?
I mean, Star
Wars?
is kind of a superhero
Jedis are
movie.
superheroes?
Chris Pine is definitely a superhero version of Kirk. I don't know. I assume he could. If there's something Steven Spielberg has done, J.J. Abrams can at least come close. He's like the
It's a little
90%
clone.
Spielberg, yeah. So,
Well, if I guess DC needs to clean house and start over, but you guys need to clean your teeth. Let me tell you a little bit about Quip, our sponsor this week. What actually makes a better toothbrush? Industrial strength power? Claims of miraculous trendy ingredients? Multiple modes? Well, if you ask your dentist, they'll tell you it's less about the brush and more about how you use it. That's why Quip was created by dentists and product designers to focus on what actually matters for your oral health: healthier habits. Quip's sensitive vibrations with a built-in timer guide gentle brushing for a dentist-recommended 2 minutes, with 30-second pulses ensuring an even clean. Quip automatically delivers brush heads to you every 3 months for clean new bristles right on schedule. The sleek, intuitive design is simple to use and comes with a travel cap that doubles as a mirror mount. These thoughtful features make brushing something you actually want to do twice a day. Good habits matter to live a healthier life, so help form fresh oral health habits with Quip. Quip starts at just $25, and you'll get your first refill free at getquip.com/film. This is a simple way to support our show and to start brushing better. But you have to go to getquip.com/film to get your first refill free. So go right now to getquip.com/film. That's getquip.com/film. Thanks, Quip, for bringing us here this week to talk about movies, a bunch of Suicide Squad talk. Everyone's favorite Joker, Jared Leto, who I think we were just talking about, is Jared Leto still the Joker? Are they making Jared Leto Joker movies?
He's gone. They've moved on.
You think they moved on with Joaquin?
No, I think they don't care because they know that as long as they put Joker somewhere in there, people will probably go see it.
That's true.
So the brand is more recognizable than the interpretation of the character. But yeah, someday I'm going to sit down and I'm going to look at everything and I'm going to try and write movies that connect everything.
Okay.
Like what would be the Iron Man 2s of the DC? How do you get from Dark Knight Rises to Suicide Squad?
I mean, Marvel got to make movies like Iron Man 2, which weren't very good, somehow still succeeded and kept them going on their track. I think it would be interesting to deep dive into Marvel's maybe worse movies that somehow they made it past. You know, they didn't have movies that sunk the franchise like Justice League seemed to maybe have.
Because they were attached to brands. People only care about brands. His core temperature is 666. Did you see that? Wow.
I love these things.
Yeah, they don't.
Is there one for
Totally forgot
Slipknot?
about her. Totally
There
forgot
is.
about her.
I did too. Can you name the members of the Suicide Squad right now?
Killer Croc.
Okay.
Deadpool.
Nope.
Shot.
I know. Killer Croc. Deadshot.
Katana. We just
Is
saw
her name
it.
Katana? Katana.
Okay.
I think.
Joker honorary member.
Yeah, I'll accept that.
Yeah, it's Katana.
Harley Quinn. Slipknot.
Big
Obviously.
Flag.
Did I say?
Viola Davis.
Did I say Heat? Diablo.
No, now you have.
Eat Man?
Who else?
Diablo and
There's at least two more that I can think of, not counting all of the soldiers that appeared
Boomerang.
and then disappeared.
Captain Boomerang.
Captain Boomerang, please state his title.
and
One more.
I don't know the last one.
Killer Croc.
I say Killer
she-
Croc.
Did you?
Absolutely.
She got
That's
Killer
my.
Croc.
He's my favorite Suicide Squad
Oh,
member.
right, you started with Killer Croc.
I would of course say him. I would never forget him. He's my favorite.
He
You
loves
know that.
BET.
You know that.
Time for me to do what I do best. Cut to him underwater, struggling.
Struggling to swim.
All right, anyway.
Yeah. Anyway. So,
Not my Joker. That's what I say. Not
not
my
your Joker. Is Joaquin going to be your Joker? Is it
I
hard to
don't
say
know. Is
not
he
having
funny?
seen a movie?
I don't know. Is he funny?
I doubt it.
No.
Not funny Joker. But so the director of Joker, Todd Phillips, had made some waves this past week. There was a Vanity Fair cover story about Joaquin Phoenix that had a few little tidbits that came from Todd Phillips that maybe created some controversy. If you don't know, Todd Phillips kind of came into prominence in the 2000s with a bunch of Will Ferrell comedies. Actually, he started with Road Trip, no Will Ferrell, but Old School, Starsky and Hutch, Hangover Trilogy. It's that kind of early 2000s style of comedy. That's when he was cranking out movies, you know, becoming a Hollywood guy. But he's turning on comedy and blaming it on a woke Hollywood system. He says it's becoming too difficult to make comedies in this woke Hollywood.
What is this? This quote is from what?
A Vanity Fair article about Joaquin's Joker.
Okay, got it.
But yeah, I guess people are saying maybe his brand of bro, irreverent humor is kind of lost favor in Hollywood, and he's essentially blaming social media, I guess.
Okay.
He says, go try to be funny nowadays with this woke culture. There were articles written about why comedies don't work anymore. I'll tell you why, because all the fucking funny guys are like, fuck this shit, because I don't want to offend you. It's hard to argue with 30 million people on Twitter. You just can't do it right. So you just go, I'm out. He continues, he goes, I'm out, and you know what? With all my comedies, I think what comedies in general all have in common is that they're irreverent. So I go, how do I make something irreverent but fuck comedy? Oh, I know, let's take the comic book movie universe and turn it on its head with this. And so that's really where that came from, talking about the Joker. He's, let's flip this superhero stuff and make something that's different.
So comedy is about a change in expectation, and despite the fact that he feels like he can't not do that in movies anymore. He's made a movie that is a defiance of expectation on what a superhero or a comic book movie would be anyway. So that's how he has moved into that.
That's how he advanced it.
So,
I mean, by essentially blaming Twitter that he's not making, $100 million comedies anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Not that The Hangover 3 wasn't good or...
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there are movies of his that I definitely enjoyed when I saw them.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Was it a time and place? Maybe?
I don't know. It's some I like. I mean, I haven't seen in years, so it's like it's hard to tell. I guess like he did find a way to reconcile the problem he was personally having with making stuff like you just pointed, like the way you described it, in subverting a different genre. If he can't find ways to subvert comedy that people seem to want anymore, I don't know if it's maybe that just he doesn't have an audience. Yeah, maybe.
I mean, he's an older man now. Sometimes older people age out of comedy. You age out of your relevance. I don't know if that's the case for Todd Phillips. I always felt his comedies were carried by the comedians that were cast in them. I never know. I mean, it's hard to tell how much a director of a comedy, if he's the writer or creator, or if it's Will Ferrell and Tom Green being the people that are funny.
Yeah.
I don't know. He seems to be lashing out a little bit at social media and the woke part of Hollywood, and I guess blaming them for killing comedy, which has kind of been in the news recently a little bit.
Oh, well, yeah.
SNL fired Shane Gillis before he was ever on it for his racist commentary.
And we did a whole Dude Soup about it a couple weeks ago, about stand-up comedy and the culture of it and backlash on social media, and how that's tied to people being like, in a weird way, because of cancel culture, it's tied to being more progressive. But we also did in that kind of expound about how sometimes people get very sensitive and they think that they are being cancel cultured or whatever, but like ultimately, when you look at the grand scheme of things, there isn't really, it's not like there's an agenda out there and people are activating that agenda to really take you down. And sometimes you have to look a little bit more introspectively at yourself and say, why do you feel this way about the stuff that you're producing or trying to produce? Just because society wants to be sensitive towards something doesn't mean that you are like unable to do it. It just might mean that you need to approach it with a different kind of perspective. And it's weird because exactly like Elise said, he did that, right? Like he felt like he couldn't make those kinds of comedies anymore.
His raunchy bro comedy.
Those comedies anymore. And so he found another way to continue doing exactly what he was trying to do with his comedies.
Which is making something irreverent.
Yeah.
Which supposedly Joker is. It's hard to talk about a movie not having seen it.
Yeah. Well, this is more about his quote. It's weird, but like even in line with his quote, he basically states, there's this problem and it prevents these things from happening. Here's how I did it. And I'm like, well, then I guess nothing was truly prevented because you made a movie. It would be, maybe there'd be a greater case for him having some real credence to that quote if he was saying it having not worked for 30 years.
Sure.
He
seems strangely bitter though, because I guess there, with some of the Joker controversy, he was lashing out at John Wick, saying, John Wick murdered 300 guys in his movie, and it didn't, people are celebrating it and cheering it, and it didn't get the backlash that this movie that no one's seen yet is getting.
I mean, he's not wrong. It's like the constant like sex and violence argument where, you can put whatever violence you want into something, but then you put sex and then everyone's like, hold on.
Yeah.
Which, like, don't get me, I love good violence. I also think like John Wick transcends into this weird like comical realm of absurd, over the top violence.
I mean, I will say in that most recent movie, I was exhausted by seeing people like shot in the head with a gun after about an hour and a half.
I guess you're desensitized, or were you exhausted? Or you're like, I don't want to see this anymore, or are you just like?
It lost any power. It's just the 300th guy that gets shot in the head by John Wick. You've lost me. I don't know.
I guess to some people it's like you should be shocked by that, and the fact that you're no longer that it is just a passive thing, it may be a problem. But I don't know. I mean, I make pretty risque jokes myself, Todd, and but I never want anyone to feel bad about it.
No, that's actually something I wanted to bring up because you guys, Funhaus toes
Ride
the
the
racy
lightning.
line. Yeah, exactly.
Ride the lightning.
If you were to try and be a politician in 15 years, people could cut up a lot of stuff that you guys have
They
said.
will.
Yeah.
They will. When we run.
When we run on a single ticket, husband and wife political team.
American Canadian.
Yeah.
So so you guys are used to that, like towing that line of being racy with comedy, because sometimes in comedy you're just putting yourself out there in the moment to say to hope you come up with something funny, some great material.
No, yeah.
All of ours is in the moment because we don't have scripts.
Right.
Like Todd did.
I mean, again, it's weird when you can say something that okay, I understand where you're coming from. As someone who also holds comedy in very high regard and its positive impact on society, and how sometimes it feels like it's oversimplification of something by just removing the context of a joke and then just re-putting it out there and you're like, okay, well, this seems really bad, but when you actually listen to the context, it makes sense. So
More satirical.
I get that frustration, but also something I do on a personal level is try and think, well, how can this make me better as a comedian? That just basically means that now I can't. That joke is too easy, so easy that the funniness. I trust in the fact that funniness overrides whatever cost there is to the comedy. So if it's very, very funny, then the cost to people's frustrations or whatever, it's going to be completely droned out. And ultimately, as a society, we will decide, well, this is comedy, it's good, and it's worthwhile having, and it's keeping. And if that doesn't happen, then potentially there's an issue with your ratio. Maybe it wasn't so funny to justify what had to be at stake for that joke to happen.
Sure. So there's there's a line where you've got vulgarity or dark comedy, and then sometimes you cross that into racism or bigotry.
I mean, everything is gray. I don't think that. I would say no, because I think intent is what crosses things oftentimes into racism and bigotry. And you can intend to say something as comedy, and it could come off that way, but I don't think that makes it inherently that. I think it just means that it really wasn't funny, and so you just basically you're a worse comedian than you are a good racist. I guess what I'm saying. But as applied to how he's talking about movies, it's just weird. Like maybe his ideas and his concepts for jokes in movies or for the movies themselves just weren't funny enough to justify the societal cost of them existing. You know what I'm saying?
And there is a different trend in, I think, kind of like what audiences are asking for in their comedies.
Sure.
Yeah.
People don't want the same thing in 2020 that they got in 2000.
Yeah.
20 years later, something's got to change a little bit.
And it's interesting because, I think that there are probably a lot of filmmakers that would maybe say that the superhero genre has kind of been the decline and death of some of these other movies, because that's, these movies, they have comedy in them. It's a big component. So a lot of people will say, the funniest a movie of the year was Thor Ragnarok to me. And someone that's probably making a pure genuine comedy is like, how can I compete with this? And these
What about the Little Hours or whatever?
How can I compete with these movies? So the fact that now he's kind of embracing a genre that maybe he might not be acknowledging could have been hurting his case is interesting too.
I think that's a great point that I hadn't even thought of.
I think some of it also comes down to creatives, comics, getting used to the modern world with social media, where I guess previously people that didn't have a voice or a platform for their voice are easy to be heard through something like Twitter or Reddit. So whereas you used to say your offensive joke and you just heard the people laugh, now you hear the people that never thought that joke was funny in a louder way. Well, and that's something that I think everyone as a modern creator or artist has to be ready for, used to, just because anyone can comment on you now, and those people can gather together. Those communities can have a platform to say, this isn't funny, this is racist or awful. And
a lot of it, just for me and my dealing with comedy as an art form and something I do, it's tough, and I identify with kind of what he's saying, because the person in maybe my position 30 years ago would be doing what I'm doing, but in small venues all over the country, traveling and doing things and trying stuff and throwing shit at the wall.
To 12 people.
To a handful of people. But now imagine if all of those were filmed and all of those existed online and people could find them whenever they wanted. Like, you're always honing your craft. No one is just going to pop out and at 10, they're the best comedian in the world. You have to kind of hone your craft, and comedy is an art form, and I think you have to improve in that art form and grow in that art form and change in that art form. But by nature of social media and the way things are delivered on demand and existing forever and live streamed, you get an immediate reaction, and also people don't understand how much things have changed or how much effort you put into something. Everything is all the same. Everything is all your best. And I don't know, it's tough. I understand with him going, I don't even want to try because I don't want to get 50 tweets, which in the grand scheme of all the people who've seen his movies is nothing.
Yeah.
But to an individual, 50 is an insurmountable crowd of voices shouting at you.
Maybe he has a hard time with criticism in general.
I do think, I hate when people like say woke culture or stuff like that, because it's like, we're just human beings trying to survive as an ever diversifying and ever merging society.
Sure, and I think people are trying to be better.
Yeah.
In general.
I think I like to think so. I hope so. But, it's like, I hate when people are like, because of woke culture. I'm like, just don't degrade humanity's effort to try and live alongside everyone else.
It's also like, don't put if you make your art, you make your comedy and you put it out there, people don't buy it, doesn't make money. That's not people being woke. That's just people not liking what you do. And that's not society's fault. That's your fault.
Conversely, I think that there is some snobbery now where people are like, well, they'll look at a movie like The Hangover and they're like, The Hangover's not funny. And I'm like, yeah, maybe some of it hasn't aged well, but there are genuinely funny moments and jokes and things about this movie. And that's just my 2 cents.
No, yeah, but I think it goes back to social media and content delivery. Everyone believes something exists today. So there's going to be someone who's never seen it before who will watch The Hangover today and will go, I didn't think that was very funny. What's Mike Tyson doing there? But when it came out and Mike Tyson shows up and you're like, Mike Tyson? Like, where did
You're like,
he
he's a
coming
convicted
from?
rapist. That's interesting that someone's employing him.
Well, there's that whole factor. But there's also just like, well, this is a lot of time these jokes were made. Like, I always talk about it with absurdism. Absurdism in comedy goes like further and further, but then it becomes the new normal. So you have to go further and further with absurdity. If you go watch Tim and Eric from the late 90s, early 2000s, it's not going to be that dramatic to you. It's going to basically be the same stuff on I always forget the name, but the Netflix sketch show.
I Think You Should Leave.
I Think You Should Leave. Like, it's probably not going to be any more shocking than some of that stuff, which is now a mainstream Netflix sketch show. So I don't know. I get where he's coming from, and I'm glad he's figured out the solution. And I'm sure because it's a Variety article, he was probably sitting and talking for 1,000 hours, and this is what they decided to pull from it. But
I mean, whoever I'm sure I could look it up. Whoever wrote that Vanity Fair article was doing their job, pulling certain maybe salacious quotes from what Phillips was saying. But that was a very, very small portion of that article. It's mostly talking to Joaquin about this crazy Joker character.
Yeah.
Our boy Taika, though, he had a super hot take. He funny. But I just bring this up because Taika seems to be succeeding with big budget comedy. Maybe that's where his little funny comes from, is that he's not struggling too hard to be funny, but he's a newer guy. Are there other people like Taika making big budget, maybe not, but Hollywood comedies? Like, is that as a genre a little dead right now?
This is interesting too, because some people might see Jojo Rabbit and think that's not appropriate.
Right.
But I think that's probably why Taika said something, because he's saying, there's this guy saying like, listen, you have to be
PC. You can't make these comedies, and he's doing it.
And Taika Waititi's making a comedy about the Nazi
Yeah.
regime and Hitler and everything, and so
which is a very sensitive topic, specifically for some people, and some people are offended at all any sort of mention of Hitler or the Holocaust or the Nazi regime.
Yeah.
So he's borderline that. Again, it's a movie I haven't seen yet, so it's hard to discuss it too much. But more to the point, have you gone to see comedies in theater in the past couple of years that stick in your mind?
I thought Game Night was a great comedy. That Cock Blockers was a great comedy.
Booksmart.
Booksmart, I thought was great.
Yeah.
Maybe not, like, I wasn't, like, uproariously laughing at it, but I still really enjoyed it.
But I think, like you said, it is a weirdly niche genre, whereas before it was a mainstay.
Oh, yeah.
Every couple of weeks would be the next comedy.
Ghost Dad or, what have you.
Well, I mean, like, Hangover was also part of a big trend,
Yeah, it was blockbuster.
But, like, there isn't really that much. What was the one with the kids that just came out recently?
Oh, yeah, where they're, like...
Young men.
I mean, there's stuff like we got
good
the...
kids, good boys. Good boys.
There was we didn't see it in theaters, but the one with Seth Rogen and Charlize Theron.
Oh yeah,
where he's like her writer.
Yeah, and then like there was the one with all the food, the animated food. That was like Seth Rogen and all those guys.
Sausage Party.
Yeah.
They exist. It definitely exists. I think the problem is we live in a world where a movie is only a success if it makes $1 billion.
That's right. And you were talking about Marvel movies. Yeah. You laugh. There are good jokes in every Marvel movie. So they're essentially comedies with cool explosions.
Well, because they're bringing over. They're Todd Phillips thing, right? They're bringing over the people from the attempt with Edgar Wright, Taika Waititi, the success. Like they're bringing these people from other genres and saying make these movies. So, yeah, you're gonna get all those elements that you get from other movies.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a void. It's kind of been filled, and I think the agenda of some of these big companies that say, yes, this is exactly what we want, are signing different checks because they want a bigger return, and that's just how it goes.
Well, yeah. It's Death of Stalin was one of my favorite movies.
That was a great movie.
Of 2018, I guess. I think I was just like the obnoxious person in the theater laughing. I thought it was hilarious, but I mean, of course, it didn't make, that much money. And then Armando Iannucci has his Life times David Copperfield coming out this year still, and I'm really looking forward to it. But it's not gonna perform super well, I don't think.
Well, it's not going to make the kind of returns that studios are probably signing
for.
Todd Phillips.
There might be no way to make $1 billion comedy film.
I mean, but you shouldn't have to.
No,
that's the beauty of comedy, is it shouldn't be expensive.
I feel like comedy, maybe most great comedy lives in TV now. I feel like it's more of a venue, lower budgets, and there's lots of great TV shows out there that I think are hilarious.
Well,
and there's something like It's Always Sunny. That's pretty irreverent shit. They're awful to each other and do like really horrible things, but I don't know that anyone's ever, accusing them of crossing the line into like real bigotry or racism or anything.
I think they've straddled that line. Some people, they've gotten a little hot in places. BuzzFeed News had an article about them recently, which really begged the question of why. I think the title of the article was "Why Hasn't Always Sunny Been Canceled?" And it ran down sort of all of their infractions when it comes to really risque comedy. And they've hit it all, and then some, and worse. And like when you kind of look at it in a very context lacking list, you're like, holy shit! Like, yeah, they've done blackface, they've done bigotry, like they've done
abortion,
dumpster babies. They've done it all, and it's like, why hasn't there been this culling for them? And I think the answer is that there are lots of answers, I think, but when I think about it, I think that they do it really, really well. They do it super funny, and the show grows, and it continues to grow. And like when you look at episodes, it was a controversial episode because I think a lot of the hardcore fan base thought it like meant the show was going soft, like the episode where Mac comes out. But I'm like, I don't know. I think that's them acknowledging that maybe they've made jokes that they aren't super proud of. But they're still going to make those jokes.
Sure.
But they're also going to try to have a more not sensitive maybe, but they're going to try to have a more thoughtful perspective while making those jokes.
They also, I don't think, hold those characters up as like heroes.
No, they're not.
Anything. They're all, they're despicable.
It's Seinfeld, people. Right? Yeah. It's like never grow, never change, be garbage, but know that they're garbage.
It just occurred to me, but Todd Phillips kind of reminds me of Adam McKay a little bit.
Yeah.
So
I always get them confused. I do.
There's the same era of 2000s comedy that they came up on, but McKay's moved on. He's making Vice. He's making The Big Short. taking his comedy and putting it into bigger, bolder drama films and thrillers and things. So
Yeah.
maybe there's a certain point where you spend a decade making funny movies and it's time for you to move on into something else.
I only want to make one last point, which I feel like we haven't touched on, though, is that these two directors maybe not pioneered, but became the primary chiefs of the big budget comedy. The Will Ferrell vehicle or whatever, because the Hangover was a relatively modest movie, but then it became extravagant.
Yeah.
And so I could understand him coming and going, well, they don't want me to make these extravagant moves anymore. And it's like, well, because they're not making returns on this. But then it's weird that he would complain about it because then he immediately goes and then he makes,
Due Date?
Well, no, then he makes Joker.
Oh, okay.
So he figured it out, like you said. He figured it out. And so it's weird to complain about it after the facts. I guess you can move on, but still be maybe bitter about the meetings he took and all the people who didn't want his $150 million idea. So.
Yeah.
But
that third Hangover movie had a $103 million budget.
See,
it's a lot.
What was the
comedy.
first one?
35.
Yeah. See, so it just
maybe
kept getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah, maybe there's some sort of formula to budget and comedy, and when you have too much, maybe it tilts the scale, and when you don't have enough.
It just probably makes it less likely that it'll exist.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Anyway.
We promised at least 2 more things, and we're getting up there in time, so.
Jeremy Renner.
Yeah.
Real quick.
I need
to tell
this.
you.
After this.
Let me tell you guys real quick about Dave, our other sponsor this week. Overdraft fees. It's time for them to die. Surprise bank charges over a couple of bucks in your account are useless, painful, and nothing but pure profit for big banks. Thanks to the Dave app, you'll never have to pay an overdraft fee again. Dave is the #1 budgeting app in America because it saves you from overdraft fees. It tells you about upcoming bills and can advance you $75 from your next paycheck with no credit check and no interest. Get the Dave app for just $1 a month. That's $12 a year, which is way less than an overdraft fee, and you'll never have to pay one again. Dave will help you budget for upcoming expenses, text you if you're spending too much, and if you need cash fast, advance you $75 in just 90 seconds. Mark Cuban is an investor in Dave because he got crushed by overdraft fees in his 20s and wants you to never pay an overdraft fee again. 3 million people already use Dave to save up to $1,000 a year in overdraft fees. That's why it's the #1 budgeting app in the App Store. Go to dave.com/filmhouse. It really helps the show if you let them know you heard them here. Then download Dave and never pay another overdraft fee again. It's immediate savings. Go now. dave.com/filmhouse. So it's spelled just like it sounds, D-A-V-E, dave.com/filmhouse. Thanks, Dave, for bringing us here this week to chat about movies. We appreciate it. Check them out, see what they're all about. If you click on the links and look at what they do using Filmhouse, it matters, it helps the show. So yeah, thanks, Dave, for bringing us here. And yeah, we have
enough about Dave. Let's talk about Jeremy.
Yeah, this is real quick. I just want to highlight someone special in the community for the audience. His name's Jeremy Renner. He's an actor. You might know him from Mission Impossible.
Bourne.
The Bourne.
What's he?
Mbebity or whatever. Boobity. But Jeremy Renner, he's got an Amazon store where you can buy items recommended and used by Jeremy Renner. He has a band and music that he makes, and a recently sunsetted app. But
He's
anyway,
a fisherman.
Yeah, Jeremy Renner. Just please do some
Jerky.
of your own research and look into what Jeremy Renner is kind of.
I actually really do like this sunscreen.
Yeah, I'm sure he makes good face sunscreen. Jeremy Renner knows it.
Some
Beef
compound
jerky.
bows.
Yeah.
What is a compound bow? Whoa.
Was he into compound bows before he played Hawkeye?
This is an initiative that Amazon has actually just kind of dipped their feet into, which is celebrity curated stores. It's a brilliant idea.
Love it.
There's maybe 9 different people that are doing
And
their
they
stores.
picked Jeremy Renner?
Why? Yeah,
celebrities,
of course.
big stars.
So check him out.
I want a Moonshine Muddy Girl pink compound bow for Christmas.
I mean, it looks cool.
Yeah, it
looks like Suicide Squad.
Cool. $400.
It's a compound bow. It does
I'm
all the
not
bowing
saying it would
for
be
you.
cheap.
You just
I
think
guess
about
he's a
what
big
you wanna hit.
outdoorsman. Is that what he's trying to say with this?
I think he is. Yeah.
He's building his brand here.
He said,
Roasting
"Alexa,
sticks.
what are the best-selling binoculars?"
There you go. Well, I also have last minute
Yeah, what is
segment.
Wait, real quick. What was the thing with the Renner app?
Oh, it's a lot
was
to get
that?
into. It just I think it became toxic, so then it got shut down, and it was a long time coming. I think that there were issues with this app.
Well, anything with an audience that large is ultimately going to become
True,
toxic
that's true.
eventually.
What was the goal of the Renner app?
I think it was just community
Renner News.
focused.
Okay.
Yeah.
Renner News,
Did he
Renner-
sell
Renner
something?
Updates.
No,
No, people come to talk about
just
Renner.
the brand of
Huh?
Jer.
When you're
I
a
like
fan
his
of
brand.
something, sometimes you just want to find like-minded people to chat Renner stuff, and sometimes not.
Yeah.
What's your favorite compound
I do
bow?
think if they do that Hawkeye show, use Fractions Hawkeye, it could be a really, really cool TV
Get Jeremy
show.
back in there. Yeah.
He is. He's in there.
Get some Kate Bishop in there.
Yeah. Pizza Dog.
So, James, you saw a movie.
Elise did
Over
as
the
well,
weekend?
but I really saw it.
Yeah.
I
You liked it a lot.
I watched Aladdin finally.
Guy Ritchie's magnum opus
Guy Ritchie's. This may be his best work. His most
of 2019.
his most coherent work. That's for sure. It's trash.
Yeah?
It's a garbage movie.
That's not surprising.
I would say of the ones I've seen, it's so far and away the worst of these Disney remakes. It has no sort of Guy Ritchie flair to the movie. If anything,
Which is why do you hire Guy Ritchie
it's
to not be
infinitely
Guy Ritchie?
slower than any other guy. It's noticeably slow. Like it looks like it was made by a robot. That you have to put X, Y, Z points into. I think some of I'll give credit where credit is due. The Never Had a Friend Like Me was expecting to point to as my crown jewel of shit in this garbage movie, and it's actually far and away the best part.
Wow.
So how was Will Smith's performance? Like that was
Fine.
one of those things people were ripping on just
was
seeing
fine.
Blue Genie first.
Yeah, it was fine. I mean, the CG looks terrible.
Oh,
it
yeah.
looks bad.
Yeah.
But at a certain point in the movie, he just turns into a regular dude, just Will Smith with a top knot, and he's fine. He's entertaining. He doesn't try and be Robin Williams. He's Will Smith as the genie, and it's all garbage, and I hated all of it. And yeah, so that's my review. I give it an 8 out of 8.
Same as Parasite.
Same as Parasite.
Same scale.
It's a different scale. It's the Aladdin scale, but yeah.
Well, all right. I think we need to close it out this week. We're not going to have time to talk about the Clue reboot. Maybe we can get to that next week.
Maybe more details will drop
Yeah.
between now and then.
Thanks for coming around, you guys. I believe we'll see Joker and talk about Joker next week. No promises, but that's probably what's going to happen. Thanks for coming around. We'll see you next week.
Bye. If someone came to me and said, "I'll pay you $4 billion for your asshole," and I was like, "Deal," and then afterwards they go, "Now I'm gonna fuck it," and I go, "What?" Like, I don't think I have any right to be surprised. Like I'm the one who was like, "Someone's offering me a lot of money for this thing."
Nice metaphor.
I don't want to discount the sort of advancements that George Lucas